It's not going to. There it comes.
There we go.
Perfect. Thanks, Blue. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll do a couple introductions as well. So first off, thanks for joining today. For those that are here on the virtual online meeting and those that are listening later on our project website. We're excited to come and present on the final draft of the Transit Development Plan, laying out the vision for the next 5 years for public transit in the Fargo-Moorhead region. So this is our kind of third round of public input throughout the entire process before we go and get final plan approvals here over the next couple of months. So just starting with some introductions, my name is Aaron Bartling. I am the project manager for the TDP on the consultant side with Bolton and Mink, and I'm joined by Blue Weber, who led all of our engagement work for the project. You may have seen his name here and there or show up in a news story once or twice throughout the process as well. But then we're also part of a larger project team, which you can see listed out, some of which are joining in here today. But our project team is made up of staff from MetroCog and MATBUS staff as well to help guide the process overall. So just a couple logistics before we get into the presentation too much. This meeting will be recorded and uploaded to the project website. So if you miss anything or want to go back and look at it, the materials will be posted up on the website. And then if you have questions that come up throughout the presentation as well, feel free to submit those in the meeting chat box and we'll address those probably as we go, but if not, for sure by the end. So like I mentioned, we're here to talk through the final plan and review that and get public feedback, stakeholder feedback ahead of final plan approvals. So you may have reviewed the draft plan up on the website already. If not, some things you can expect from that, the different components. So starting with an existing conditions analysis, really getting an understanding of what's out there today, what's working well, where there are opportunities to maybe improve certain things, but also going out and getting public feedback too on how the system works for riders, for other stakeholders in the region. And from that, we were able to start identifying what future system needs might be. And through that, we did some scenario planning work where we presented a couple different service scenarios to kind of test different service concepts and explore different ideas of how we could provide transit service a little bit differently in the region. And after getting feedback on that, we put together final service recommendations, which we'll kind of focus on here with today's presentation. And then throughout the whole plan, you'll see those key touch points where we met with the public, riders, stakeholders to gather that community feedback on each of the key touch points throughout the project. And you'll see that weaved into the final plan as well. And then the final component of the plan is what we call the coordinated transportation plan. There's a much longer name for it, coordinated human services transportation plan, but for short, we like to call it the coordinated plan, which really takes a broader look at all transportation services within the region and making sure that we're finding efficiencies between those and that they're all working and talking to each other. And then just another note on the public comment period, which is open right now. Like I said, we're soliciting feedback on the final plan, and that public comment period will close on September 10th. So what's the overall purpose of the Transit Development Plan, or TDP? So to start, it's really building on the goals, objectives, and the recommendations that were established in the previous TDP. This is something that is completed every 5 years. So it's really kind of using that as a base, but then obviously we want to recognize what the existing needs are. A lot has changed since the last TDP. We've gone through a pandemic, transit service and needs have changed quite a bit during that time. So really kind of taking a look at that now and how that might impact future service with funding levels, available resources, and just what riders are wanting out of the transit service today. So with that, we're prioritizing what those improvements are within the resources that are available and then determining what is required to help implement adjustments over the next 5 years. And like I mentioned, part of this TDP effort too includes that coordinated transportation plan as well. So overall process, there were 3 key phases that broke out our efforts over the last year. So we started this project last summer and really began with the existing conditions work. So collecting the data, gathering input from the community, really doing a deep dive into existing routes and understanding how they're performing today to help us start identifying where there are issues and opportunities within the existing system. From there, we got into future system needs work where, like I mentioned, we developed different service scenarios to explore some possible route adjustments and then developed priorities for future improvements. And then again, gathered community and stakeholder feedback on that. That got us through into this spring. And then over the course of the spring and into the summer this year is where we really finalize what those future recommendations are, finalize the coordinated plan, and are here today to present on the final plan. And then we are expecting plan approval here in October, November timeframe as we work through presentations to the cities and then MetroCog as well for final plan approval. So breaking out our engagement plan and how we've kind of approached this, it generally followed those three key phases that I just mentioned in the last slide, but we had a few different buckets of how we engage with the community. First one being our study review committee. This was kind of that oversight group that was made up of representatives from around the Fargo-Moorhead region that helped guide the project along the way through various points throughout. So that first one was really early on in the existing conditions phase of helping us understand what those issues and opportunities might be, but also help us confirm how we should be engaging with the public. And then we moved into service alternatives and got feedback on the different scenarios that we were putting out there. And then looked at future implementation where we presented some of the final service recommendations and some draft plan materials. And then the final one, reviewing that final plan document. On the public side of things, it followed a similar process where we had 3 rounds of public input opportunities. All had their own survey periods that lasted a month or 2, depending on the different phases. But again, starting with the issues and opportunities last fall, getting into the service alternatives in this spring, and then we're here today to present the draft plan and gather feedback on that. And then the final bucket for our engagement efforts were in this with using focus groups, and we had 6 different themes to our focus groups that where we grouped attendees into just kind of based on their backgrounds and areas of expertise. So looking at planners from local jurisdictions, human services groups, community-based organizations, the business community, emergency preparedness, and then educational institutions as well, like the colleges, were those topic areas, and each had similar discussions, but tailored to kind of what their backgrounds were and how transit impacts the work that they do and the clients that they work with. So just kind of a high-level overview of what the existing transit service is. So there's 19 fixed routes out there today, 2 on-demand service zones where you can use a phone to book a trip and travel anywhere within the specified zone, and then paratransit service as well. And just looking at kind of where are people going and how are riders using the system today in terms of top ridership locations. The GTC in downtown Fargo is the top location where we see a lot of transfers, a lot of walk-up riders utilizing or accessing the transit service at that location. And then West Acres Mall, another big one, followed by NDSU campus area, 13th Ave Walmart, and the Marriott Transfer Hub. So a lot of these are those kind of transfer hub locations where people are connecting between different routes. And you'll see here on the next slide how important transfers are to riders on the system. So what have we heard from all of the engagement that we've done? Obviously, we've heard much more than what you're seeing on the screen, but I wanted to pull out some of the key points that really helped to drive how we started thinking about service for the future, going back to when we were looking at different scenarios and then into the final recommendations as well. So the first one there on the bottom left, how well does the existing MATBUS service work for you? And you can see it's broken out by it works well, sometimes works well, it doesn't work well, or sometimes doesn't work well. And you can see a majority of respondents to our survey did say that the service does work well for them or sometimes works well. So generally pretty positive thoughts on the service overall, which really solidified the fact that we don't need to be looking at any major changes to the transit system today. It's really about fine tuning and understanding where those opportunities to maybe streamline certain areas, look at areas that were maybe lower ridership to help kind of grow ridership, but without any major changes to the service overall. And then the pie charts on the right there up at the top is about transfers. So we asked how often or if people use transfers to complete their trip, and 75% of our survey respondents regularly use more than one route to reach their destination, which just shows how important it is at those transfer sites to be able to connect to other routes. And I'll kind of revisit that as we get into some of our service recommendations too and how we took that into consideration. And then we also asked about service access priorities. This is something that we like to see to help us make decisions on how far a route might deviate off of a main corridor versus keeping it streamlined for quicker trips. And it helps kind of make overall priority decisions when looking at future service recommendations. And when we asked about that to our survey respondents, majority preferred shorter walks to the bus stops, even if it meant longer travel times. So that meant they typically would prefer that the bus might meander off and do a route deviation to some more local roads to pick them up closer to their home or where they're going versus having to walk further. And a lot of that is based on probably the weather for the Fargo region and not wanting to walk in the cold winters, right, where it's super windy and snowy, and people would prefer that closer proximity for their bus stop. So based on all of that and the engagement that we received from the various phases on the project, we put together this preferred service plan with kind of 6 guiding principles, I'll say, that you can see there listed on the left. And then on the right is a map of the preferred network based on this TDP. I'll say that this map is available online. It's in the draft plan, but there's also an interactive map on the project website that allows you to kind of zoom in and out of areas and see what the future plan looks like for your route, for where you live, or how you access the destinations that you're traveling to. But just touching on the key guiding principles, we really wanted routes to be simple and direct, connecting destinations as directly as possible and making them easier to understand, especially for new riders. That's an important thing when we're trying to attract new riders to the system, is making sure that it's easy for them to understand. The next piece is bi-directional. So today there's a lot of one-way loops on the transit routes in various areas. So kind of figuring out how we can modify that to make routes operate in both directions on the same street whenever possible. Again, kind of reducing the complexity of the service and making it a little bit easier for new customers and existing customers. Fewer transfers was the third guiding principle. So we know transfers were a big deal for existing riders today. So trying to figure out as much as possible how we can offer a one-seat ride for people to get to their destination without having to hop off the bus and hop on another one. Maintaining access was a big one. So kind of on the flip side of simple and direct, we still need to make sure that we're maintaining access and balancing with making routes more direct, but also ensuring that we're still providing service to those key destinations that people are traveling to. And then scalable, so service, we want to make sure it's designed to either be enhanced or reduced in the future without losing the integrity of the overall network. So kind of identifying those areas that could be tweaked or modified based on available resources and that sort of thing as we look into the future. And then reliability is a big thing as well that played into some of the adjustments we made, making sure that, especially with the number of transfers people are taking, routes need to be reliable and operating on time so that they can make their trip successfully. So when we look at the areas or the key areas of change, we really focused on kind of the Southwest Fargo, West Fargo areas, and then Moorhead, Southeast Moorhead and Dilworth areas for a lot of our changes, or the more major changes. So what that means in terms of route numbers, so Route 3, Routes 4, 6, and 9, Route 13, and then in the West Fargo, Southwest Fargo area, Routes 18 2021, which is a suggested new route, and Route 24. And I have a few slides that'll kind of break these down a little bit further to kind of help you understand what those recommended changes are. So starting in the city of Moorhead with Route 3. So this is a route that we know has on-time performance challenges today, and being able to kind of make it up to the East End Shopping Center and back. Part of this is due to railroad crossings that exist on the current routing. So we took that and made a slight revision to have new bidirectional service on 4th Avenue by the high school. Today it's a one-way loop operating through this area. So this would improve service to the high school, but also on-time performance by avoiding rail crossings on 12th Avenue south in that area. And then this route would continue to operate or interline with Route 1. And if you're not familiar with interlining, essentially when Route 3 completes its trip back here at the Marriott Transfer Hub, it will continue on to Route 1 and make its way to GTC. So this is an example of where customers are able to stay on the bus and continue on. And then just with the elimination of 12th Ave from Route 3, we are making some suggested changes on Route 6 as well, which we'll show in another slide as well to kind of fill the gap of where we're seeing some existing ridership along that corridor today. So expanding a little bit out for Moorhead area, but into Dilworth as well. So routes 4, 6, and 9 are going through some changes as well. So Route 4 is probably the biggest one in this area where we're essentially kind of splitting the existing Route 4 today. So today Route 4 does this big loop along First Ave here to the Dilworth Walmart and through the residential areas in the Clay County services before going back to GTC. With this suggested change, the First Ave service would actually be broken off and kind of be its own new route. And I'll touch on that here in a sec. So the existing Route 4 then would become bidirectional service by the Clay County Government Center and then through the residential areas as well. So with this change, frequencies would be reduced to 60 minutes. However, being bidirectional service, the bus would be traveling through these areas twice an hour now to serve these areas and destinations today that are currently only served by a one-way loop. So you can only catch it every so often and have to kind of ride the loop before getting to your destination. So by doing that, it allows us to break off this First Ave segment where we see a lot of the ridership on Route 4 today. And the goal here is to provide a more direct connection from GTC to those top ridership locations on First Ave and then to the Dilworth Walmart. So it provides a little bit more of a direct service with less stops for those customers. And then with that, we're also going to connect it into Route 6 and 9, which would be rebranded to Route 6A and 6B to make it a little cleaner for customers to understand. So what that does then is provides a one-seat ride for customers in Dilworth and Southeast Moorhead to be able to get to GTC now without having to transfer at Walmart like they do today and hop on another bus. So really the goal here is to kind of streamline those connections and make service a bit easier for customers in these areas to access GTC, but also the greater transit system as well into the Fargo area. So then moving to the Fargo side, this one's a relatively minor change with Route 13, but the goal here was to bring some bidirectional service to the route, eliminating some of the one-way loops on it. So we have some alignment modifications to do that on the north end here, where instead of navigating down through this area to get back to University, we actually bring it back to Broadway to hit some of these retail destinations and then some higher density developments in this area. And then we also have some routing cleanups through campus area where kind of eliminating some routes or segments of the route that don't see much ridership today and making it a little bit more convenient throughout campus and just, like I said, overall cleaning up the route and bringing that bidirectionality to it. And then moving to the south with Route 14, again, a relatively minor change here, but one that kind of hits some new destinations that have become a priority. So we're eliminating one loop to be able to add another loop and provide service to Elliott Place Apartments over here along 30th Ave. So relatively minor, but just providing a bit better connections and hope to capture some newer ridership in these areas and replace segments that aren't seeing ridership today. And then we get to the fun one. So this map's a bit to take in. There's quite a bit of route changes happening in this area, some of which we just saw with the Route 14 there, so I won't touch on that one here. But really this one is focused on routes 18, 20, 21, which is a suggested new route, and then Route 24. And I'll first start by saying our goal here was to maintain access as much as possible. So we didn't want to eliminate large segments on the existing routes that are out there today because they are connecting some key points like grocery stores, higher density residential developments, and just various or medical facilities that we want to make sure we were maintaining with this. But we still wanted to meet our bidirectional goals, our simplicity goals, um, and just providing kind of new connections to and providing better service to the destinations that are being accessed today. So the biggest thing is Route 18, which currently runs down 25th Street and makes its way to the South Walmart, is actually being restructured entirely and will now kind of stay more to the north up here and work together with Route 20 in West Fargo, where they'll be interlined. So it's serving a segment of Route 20 today, which allows us to make some slight changes to 20, but then it provides again a one-seat ride for West Fargo customers riding the bus where they can stay on, go through West Acres area, and then continue on to the GTC. So with Route 18 being pulled up to West Acres area, we still wanted to be able to serve the South Walmart. So we made some modifications to the existing Route 24 and kind of made its way back down to this area and brought some bidirectionality to it. But because of that, we had to take portions of this area out from Route 24. So we brought that back with Route 21. And I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you. So essentially, though, we wanted to make sure we were keeping those destinations that are seeing ridership. So we brought in this new route with bidirectional service again to provide and maintain that access and hopefully provide a bit of a better connection. Today, that's a bit more streamlined, quicker to get to your destination, but also just easier to understand for customers versus the one-way loop that's out there today. I think that's it for that one. So kind of taking a step back now and looking at how this impacts the region overall and what these changes are doing to the existing network today. I think the main point we want to highlight is that 99.6% of existing customers will continue to be served by this preferred network that's been developed. So what you see in this map here, those areas highlighted in orange and with the red numbers there are the expected impacts we'll see for daily riders that are using the system today based on these route changes. So these are segments that have been eliminated in the preferred service plan. And you can see overall numbers are relatively low, a little bit higher in some areas, but we think there's, based on the changes overall, it's providing better connections to those areas and better access to the existing customers that are out there today. And like you can see there, almost 100% of those existing customers will continue to be served by this plan. And then just looking at the number of residents and jobs being served, we do see a slight increase in both of those areas as well with these changes. Actually 2% increase in how many people have access to transit now, and then a 5% increase in the number of jobs being served by this preferred service plan. Then when it comes to our guiding principles of fewer transfers and reliability, the routes highlighted in orange here are where we really focus on those one-seat rides. So trying to eliminate areas that customers might have to take 2 or 3 buses to get to their destination today and streamlining that for them. So we've done that through the use of interlining again, where someone at the South Walmart could continue on through the West Acres area and then into GTC. It might be a different route, but they'd be able to stay on the same bus and not have to hop off. And in the cold winters, that means they don't have to get out and wait in the cold. And it also makes it a little bit more reliable for them too if buses are running late ever and they might miss a connection. So these are those key areas where we focused on eliminating transfers as much as possible for existing customers today. And then looking at routes that are simple and direct, but also bring some bi-directional routing to them. These are where we implemented that in the region. So like we touched on up here to the north, over here through Moorhead area into Dilworth with the Route 4 and 6 changes. And then out here on the west with Route 18, 24, and then the 21 as well. So these are all the areas that might have been a bigger loop before, and we're bringing in routes that go in both directions to provide better access in those areas. So kind of looking ahead, you may have seen discussions around what transit looks like in the region through city updates, through the city of Fargo, and you might be aware that MATBUS is forced to kind of face some of the realities of what resources are available today and are making some suggested changes to routing service or routing and what overall service looks like in the region. So this plan, timing of it didn't fully allow us to vet some of those changes, but we wanted to recognize that it's a very real thing happening. So we've kind of touched on it with the transit development plan and really just reiterated the fact that these guiding principles remain in place as MATBUS looks at changes to the service overall. And given the uncertainty of what's to come with budget constraints being faced in the region, as MATBUS continues to evaluate what they need to do to make it work, these are some of the key themes that will continue to play out as they look at the service, including evaluating where those underperforming routes are, adjusting frequencies as it makes sense to routes, and then reallocating areas to better serve those high need areas as well. So MATBUS continues to collaborate with city officials to create these various service plans that are guided by the principles and recommendations that are outlined in this TDP. And the final thing I'll touch on here is that coordinated plan that I mentioned, which you'll see towards the end of the TDP document. So the coordinated plan, again, is the Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan. And these are a requirement to be developed locally, and there's a few key things that must be included with the coordinated plans that you can see listed there. So the first one is just really taking an inventory of what all of the available transportation services are in the region, and then evaluating those and understanding what the transportation needs and gaps are for key populations in the region. And then from that evaluation, we're looking at the identification of strategies to help address what those needs are. And throughout the process, we want to gather input from seniors, people with disabilities, transportation providers, and other key stakeholders to help inform what those strategies are. But again, the overall purpose is just to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the transportation system overall. So kind of taking a step back from just the fixed route service, which the TDP focuses on primarily, and looking at all those other transportation providers in the region as well. So from those efforts, we developed five goals for the coordinated plan that'll kind of lay out the next 5 years following a similar timeline as the TDP. So that first one is service availability and accessibility. So just looking at when that service is actually available, this is a key theme we've heard of. We know transit service on Sundays is a big issue in the region and one that gets brought up a lot. So addressing things like that. The second one is education, marketing, and awareness, just making sure people are aware of what's out there today, what's available. MATBUS has an excellent resource out there, Link FM, that kind of provides an overview of what the transportation services are. So continuing efforts like that to make sure people are in the know, looking at translating documents to various languages to make sure that it's representative of all that are living in the region. And then the third goal is financial sustainability and fiscal responsibility. And then followed by 4, which is promoting regional coordination, and then 5, the use of new technologies to help improve service delivery and coordination as well. So with that, I'm kind of wrapping up my presentation here. Like I said, there is the project website that's live where you can go in and review the final report, review the coordinated plan separately, and then there's both a survey that you can kind of a high-level survey. You can just provide general thoughts on the plan overall, but then we also have an interactive map that allows you to zoom in and out of specific areas and provides comments directly on the map, or you can just use that to review the route changes and then go back to the survey and provide your feedback as well. So the public comment period is open until September 10th. We have the link right there. Otherwise, it's on MetroCog's website, MATBUS's website, for you to be able to access this project site as well. And then just looking at next steps. So next month, we'll be presenting a similar presentation to this, just an overview of the final plan to the MATBUS Coordination Committee. And then following that in October, we'll be seeking resolutions of support from all the cities, Fargo-Moorhead, West Fargo, and Dilworth. And then after that is when we'll take it to MetroCog committees for final plan approval in November. And with that, we are here for another hour to address any questions that come up, comments you might have. Otherwise, like I said, there's this online survey too where you can submit any feedback to. I want to thank you all for your time, though. It looks like we do have one